Well, Canadians, if you thought the last Liberal government was terrible as far as finances go, well, you're in for a big surprise. This government is so terrible with finances, they're not even going to be entering a budget this year. They say they're going to enter a fall financial statement almost a year, or probably even more than a year after the last financial statement was produced. It would in a drive-by fashion where Karina Gold just dropped it and ran, didn't even expand on it, didn't even allow a vote on it, which there should have been. No, she just dropped it and ran. So we're going to go for a year without a budget, without a financial statement. And what do you think is going to happen in the fall? Do you think that there's actually going to be a fall financial statement? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it. Welcome to my channel, y'all. I hope you're having a great day. Well, I have a few things to talk about today. I'm going to start off, however, with the budget. And to do that, we're going to go to a Globe and Mail article just to confirm that this is indeed happening. And then we'll go to a little clip from the Taxpayers Association of Canada. So this is from the Globe and Mail. There are no plans to release a budget before summer, Champagne says. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government will not table a 2025 budget before the summer, and instead is working towards updating federal finances in a fall economic statement, Finance Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne indicated Wednesday. The Liberal government held consultations on a budget ahead of the spring election campaign, but no date was ever set for its release. Mr. Carney's new cabinet met Wednesday for the first time since they were sworn in the day before. Following the meeting, Mr. Champagne was asked if he'll be tabling a budget before the summer. His answer strongly suggested that will not happen. He said the plan for the government is to release a throne speech in Parliament, introduce legislation that will enact a promised income tax cut that will take effect July 1st, and then have an economic statement in the fall. There's 3 steps. It is very clearly outlined, and I would say Canadians have seen the priorities that we have outlined during the campaign. Priorities are not going to be different, he said. While a budget provides an outline for federal spending plans, it is not essential to the operations of the government. Spending is formally approved by Parliament through a process known as the estimates, which are required to be voted on in regular cycles. The estimates only provide a snapshot of spending plans, meaning they can't be relied on to form a complete picture of how the government plans to spend taxpayers' dollars. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think this way of running a government is very good at all. And it could explain why we've had so many overruns in the past years, in the past 10 years especially, but really whenever there's been a Liberal government in control. And the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, well, they had a few things to say about it as well.
Breaking news, folks. The Carney government just said that it's not going to be tabling a budget this year. Crazy, folks. I mean, first of all, this decision alone is a huge crack in Carney's credibility. Look, how can you have any credibility on fiscal responsibility if you can't even put together a budget plan? Canadians have every reason to be worried about the state of our national finances. The government is more than $1 trillion in debt. The government doubled the debt in less than a decade. The government has been running deficits in the tens of billions of dollars every single year. In Carney's platform, he plans to add another $225 billion to the debt over the next 4 years. I mean, folks, the banker is supposed to be better with the numbers than the drama teacher, but Carney is planning on adding almost $100 billion of more debt than even what Trudeau was planning to do.
Well, that doesn't speak too highly of the banker who, of course, who was a failed banker in Great Britain, who almost bankrupted Great Britain, at least according to Liz Truss, a former British Prime Minister. No, he comes back to Canada and he takes credit for doing all these amazing things, but he can't even introduce a budget. He's not even as good at numbers as a failed prime minister, a failed drama teacher who left West Point Grey Academy under suspicious circumstances, a drama teacher who says that he isn't even all that great with numbers. And now we have a banker as a prime minister who can't even release a budget. Well, that's a big failure in my mind. But that's not the only failure that Mark Carney has come up with this week. Let's take a look at what his cabinet picks look like, and then you be the judge at how big a failure this prime minister is actually going to be. This is a breakdown of Mark Carney's cabinet, and when I counted it up, guess what? It was half males and half females, and he did say that he was going to have gender equity in the cabinet. Where did we hear that before? Oh, I think it was 2015 when Trudeau took power, and look what happened in the last 10 years after that, because apparently it's not what you know, it's what your gender is. That's really important to Mark Carney. So let's go over this cabinet. Let's see some of the highlights. So we have Mark Carney, of course. Then we have Shafwat Ali, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, who is the president of the Treasury Board. We have Anita Anand, who is Foreign Affairs Minister. So Melanie Joly was demoted, and Anita Anand was promoted. We have Gary, and I can't pronounce his last name, who is public safety. That's a fairly important portfolio, I would say. We have Francois Philippe Champagne, who is a finance and national revenue minister. Then we have Sean Fraser. Sean Fraser, who destroyed immigration and destroyed housing, is now going to have the opportunity to destroy criminal justice. Then we have Chrystia Freeland, who is transport and internal trade. So obviously not the deputy prime minister. Of course, we don't even have a deputy prime minister, or at least none was indicated here. Stephen Guilbeault, the environmentalist, the radical environmentalist, is now going to be the Canadian identity and culture and minister responsible for official languages. Now that makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? Of course, he's really only going to be focusing on a lot of Quebec issues because apparently Canada doesn't have a culture, only Quebec does. That's according to Yves Francois Blanchet, and Trudeau's old cabinet obviously believe that as well. Melanie Joly is now industry and minister responsible for Canada economic development for Quebec, only for Quebec. So she's got quite the demotion. But hey, let's just focus on Quebec. Let's not have economic development for other regions of Canada. No, we have a minister just for Quebec here. Dominic LeBlanc failed at everything that he's been in as well, as far as I'm concerned. Now he's the president of the King's Privy Council for Canada, minister responsible for Canada-US trade, intergovernmental affairs, and one Canadian economy. David McGuinty, national defense. I'm not sure what qualifications he has for national defense, but he is national defense. Gregor Robertson, he is housing and infrastructure minister and responsible for Pacific Economic Development Canada. Of course, he screwed up housing on the West Coast. Hey, why not? Why not, promote this guy to Pacific and Economic Development because he did so well as the mayor of Vancouver? Not. And then we have Rachel Valdez, and I'm probably pronouncing her first name wrong. Miss Valdez is Women and Gender Equality and Secretary of State for Small Businesses and Tourism. Women and Gender Equality. So you have to have that woke position in cabinet to carry on the tradition of the drama teacher. What's really good about this new cabinet, though, is that Bill Blair is nowhere to be seen. He was a disaster. He was a disaster as the Minister of National Defense. He was a disaster for the Minister of Public Safety. And he was a disaster as the Chief of Police of Toronto Police Service. Or at least that was my opinion of him. Well, now that you've seen a little bit of a breakdown of Mark Carney's cabinet, let's go and see what Pierre Poilievre has to say about some of these positions.
Trudeau ministers are now in Carney's cabinet. It's more of the same when Canada needs real change. Even the new additions are problematic. Gregor Robertson was the mayor of Vancouver who pushed for total legalization of hard drugs, distribution of tax-funded opioids. During his time there was a 600% increase in overdoses. Now he's the housing minister. Well, what's his record on housing? Well, he increased housing taxes in Vancouver by 141%. And the result was that housing costs went up by 149%, more than doubling the costs and giving Vancouver, his city, the most expensive housing prices in all of North America. Now, Mr. Carney puts this gentleman in charge of housing. If this is the new blood that Mr. Carney is bringing into the cabinet, then sadly for Canadians, nothing is going to change.
Well, I totally agree that nothing is going to change. And now let's hear what Pierre Poilievre has to say about Sean Fraser.
Sean Fraser was the immigration minister who caused the immigration crisis, the housing minister who gave us the housing crisis, and now he's the minister responsible for addressing the Liberal crime crisis. It seems like he is the master at failing upward.
Yes, he's the minister who has perfected the art of failing upwards. He wasn't actually going to run again. There was a lot of Liberals who weren't going to run again. But then they changed their minds once the polls changed, because now they were actually capable of being reelected. And that was solely because Mark Carney came in and there was this great change in the polls, for whatever reason that was. Yeah, he's a bit of a mercenary. He really doesn't care about serving the people. He just cared about getting reelected, like a lot of Liberals did. So what does Pierre think about all of the policies that Carney has stolen from the Conservative Party of Canada?
We want to see dramatic changes, not soft reassurances. We also have an offer to make the Liberals. My message to Mr. Carney: steal my ideas. We've got great ideas. And we've been leading the charge on the debate over carbon taxes, inflation, housing prices, crime, drugs, resource development. And I note the Liberals even lifted a few of those ideas and put them in their platform to get reelected. We want to make sure that they were sincere about that. And we're going to continue to put forward solid ideas to make people's lives better every day.
And that was a theme that we saw throughout the election. He kept on stealing Pierre's ideas. They're good ideas, of course, and that's why he stole them. And it's kind of been a theme throughout Mark Carney's career, even going all the way back to university, where he plagiarized his thesis and then he took credit for getting us through the '08 economic crisis, which he had absolutely nothing to do with at all. And then, of course, he did take a lot of credit for things that were happening in Great Britain, although he almost wrecked the economy there, according to Liz Truss, again, the former British Prime Minister. So, yeah, he takes a lot of credit for good things that he thinks have happened, and then he just kind of ignores or sloughs off all of the bad things that have happened under his watch. So, yeah, expect more of the same from Carney during the next 4 years. So Pierre was actually asked at this press conference something else that's been going on in Canada lately, something very serious, and that was about Alberta separation, because, of course, the left really wants to make it out that everybody who is conservative is for Alberta separation. But let's see what Pierre has to say about that.
So are you willing to publicly denounce Alberta separatism and the Alberta separatist movement ahead of a possible referendum on Alberta independence next year?
Look, I'm against separation. I'm a born and raised Albertan. I love Canada. I think we need to unite this country. Albertans have a lot of legitimate grievances. I mean, let's be blunt. Canada's biggest industry, which happens to largely be situated in Alberta, has been under attack for the last decade. They've lost two major pipelines, a $20 billion mine. There's a new ridiculous energy cap that's going to drive jobs and production south to the United States of America. There's an industrial carbon tax that's going to kill the industry. And so, frankly, Albertans have a right to be frustrated. And I think the message to the government in Ottawa, the Liberal government, is you can't tell Alberta to just pay up and shut up. Albertans want to be part of a united Canada, but they deserve to be treated with respect, and they deserve to be honored for the immense contribution that they make to this country. And I will be a unifier who works to bring all Albertans to a place where they feel that they are respected and honored in our wonderful country.
Well said, Pierre. And of course, I believe that the left is going to twist this, and they're not going to let up on it. They're going to keep on piling on these questions about Alberta separation even though he answers this. They do this all the time. You can't just answer a question once if you're a conservative. You're going to get nailed time and time again on the same questions. They do this with Danielle Smith all the time. They keep on asking her if she supports Alberta separation. She keeps on saying no, but she does respect the right of the citizens to choose and the democratic process. They're probably going to ask Pierre this question time and time again as well. But let's get back to Mark Carney and his cabinet. Mark Carney did an interview with Vassy today, and she actually put some fairly serious, tough questions to him. Let's go and see some of those interactions.
I want to talk about something a bit more conventional when you talk about big projects, and that is around energy. And in particular, when you said during the campaign you want to make Canada an energy superpower, do you mean you want Canada to export more oil and gas?
Well, that is an element of it, but it's not the element of it. So there are multiple elements. When you're a superpower, let's look at America. America is a superpower. It is a superpower because it has a strong economy. It is a superpower because it has a strong military. Arguably, it is also a superpower because it has soft power, has cultural, the American influence is multiple, and all of those aspects contribute to it. So when I talk about being an energy superpower, I always say in both clean and conventional energies. So what does that mean? Yes, it does mean oil and gas. It means using our oil and gas here in Canada to displace imports wherever possible, particularly from the United States. It makes no sense to be sending that money south of the border or across the ocean. But yes, it also means more exports, without question. But it doesn't stop there. That in and of itself doesn't make us an energy superpower. We can be an energy superpower, and we have all the components in nuclear, in hydro, in potentially in carbon capture and storage.
So what is he talking about there? How can we become an energy superpower in nuclear and hydro? Well, we actually can't, or at least not the way that we think of it. He's thinking of it as more of a cultural thing, as more of a world leader in carbon capture and in clean energy. Well, that's just great, but that's not going to help our economy. We can export natural gas. We can export oil. We can export a little bit of energy, electricity to the United States, but we can't export electricity across the ocean. It just won't work. Every mile that electricity goes through a power line, you lose a little bit of it. It's just lost. It goes out into the atmosphere. It seeps through the lines. So it's impossible to become an energy superpower if you're talking about electricity, other than to a certain amount to the United States. No, he's talking about a cultural superpower when it comes to all of these woke green things like carbon capture. But that's not going to help us. That's not going to help you or I, and it's not going to help the Canadian economy. But it will help his companies.
People in Alberta and Saskatchewan who didn't vote for your party are worried about, right? They are worried that it is the Mark Carney of values. It is the Justin Trudeau government. And the reason I ask about that is against that backdrop, right? You are still saying you're going to keep C-69 in place. You are going to keep the emissions cap in place. They view that as evidence of something. They view that, pardon me, as evidence of something that runs counter to what you're saying right now.
What I've said very clear. Look, I am a pragmatist. I go over and over on this, and I really am. I'm interested in results. So the point of building a pipeline, the point of building out carbon capture is to get the results, to get those barrels to the market, to get carbon down. You can do both. We have the capability to do more. And we have the capabilities financially, from a technological perspective, in terms of the companies. Federal government can play a role. The province of Alberta, obviously other provinces, Indigenous people have to come along for almost all of these projects in order for them to actually work. And what I'm putting on the table is, okay, let's go. Let's not talk about this. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's focus in on specific projects and let's work on them together.
Do you ever notice he doesn't actually specify what projects he's going to work on, how he's going to accomplish these goals, especially if he's not going to repeal C-69? How are we going to get our oil to market? It doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't actually believe him. And I don't think that he has a plan, or else he would be releasing a budget. Why isn't he releasing a budget if he's got a plan after all? What kind of a banker doesn't have a budget in mind? Well, this whole thing stinks to me. I don't believe a damn thing he's saying. And during this interview, Vasi does ask him about the cabinet and what's changed and how he can accomplish new things if he has the same old people involved. And this is very telling. So let's go to that segment of this interview, and then we'll talk about it.
Some similarities. There's experience being deployed in different ways. I'm a new prime minister, and let's look at the cabinet as a whole, because I'm not quite sure I make the distinction between the quote front bench and the cabinet as a whole. We only have 28 cabinet ministers. That's down from the mid-upper 40s. Some previous governments. Half of those ministers are new. Never been cabinet ministers before. In many cases, they're new to Parliament as a whole. So we're bringing in a lot of fresh energy, fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, alongside with experience, and that's a good team. That's a good management team, in my judgment. Obviously, I spent a lot of time trying to construct it that way.
And I do take the point on the fresh faces, but even when you point to the experience of those who are in the sort of biggest roles, the reason why I highlight them is because they were at the forefront of the decisions that the previous government made.
I disagree with that.
They were. I mean, Melanie Joly, François-Philippe Champagne, he led the industrial policy. Now he'll be in charge of finance. Dominic LeBlanc led a lot of those files as well. We are used to hearing from them, justifying and explaining the decisions that Justin Trudeau made.
Well,
so now we're going to hear from them again.
Well, first off, now you're hearing from me. I'm a new Prime Minister. I'm the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. I've got very clear set of objectives, which I laid out in the course of my initial government from that cabinet table. Cancel the carbon tax right there.
So listen to what he just said there. He's a different prime minister. Basically, this is all coming down from him. Every government decision is going to come from him. All of these ministers who are replaceable, they can be interchanged. They can be plucked out and put into a different portfolio because they really have no expertise that gives them any insight as to what they're really doing. They're like pieces of a Colt 1911, which is totally interchangeable. You can throw all the parts in a box and you can take them out and put them together and they'll all fit and they'll all work, and they don't have to be from that particular gun. Think about that. These people are all interchangeable because they're not really making any decisions on their own. They're all following the dictates of their master, Mark Carney, who is also following the dictates of the World Economic Forum. So are things going to be different? Maybe, but only because you have a new leader who is a little bit better than Justin Trudeau, but he's still following the dictates of people above him. And those people aren't us. Those people are in Davos, Switzerland. But of course, that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think, though. Put your comments down below. And while you're at it, please like this video, share with your friends and on social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never miss another video. Also, please join me on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific time for my live stream on both YouTube and Rumble, where you're invited to join in on the conversation. Finally, if you wish to get your Canadian firearms license, I teach the required courses. So if you live on Vancouver Island and you want to take a course from me, there are links in the show notes of this video to my website where you can sign up for one. And I do have a course scheduled for May the 24th and the 25th. So again, if you want to take that course, follow the links in the show notes and sign up for it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.